back to Q&A with Dr. Winley. Today is the second episode and we're talking about how do I choose a therapist given all the different letters that are out there. I got you. All right, let's get started. All right, y'all. So listen, I can only imagine how overwhelming it is right now to choose a therapist. There are so many of us, right? And we just keep on coming. I mean, recently I was talking to someone and they were telling me that they are studying to be a clinical mental health counselor. And I was like, how is that any different than my field and like the psychologists and like what is going on? You know, I'm just like, we just keep, which is great because there's plenty of people that need to be helped out there, but it's just like there's one new thing after the other. So I'm gonna let you know what these things mean and we're gonna figure out what is the best fit for you. All right, so I'm gonna start with the best of the best. No, I'm just kidding. I am an LMFT. That stands for a licensed marriage and family therapist. Recently, we changed our title to be a couple and family therapist just to be more inclusive. And so an LMFT is someone who thinks systemically. They are going to think about the individual in the context of these different systems, such as their family of origin, their culture, even the larger, broader society. Like they're going to think about them and how that's impacting the presenting concern that they're coming into. That's very different than a traditional psychologist who will focus on the intra and internal factors, right? So just for you to kind of know their theoretical orientation, but you can find an LMFT in a lot of different settings. You know, you probably are less likely to hear about an LMFT because I would say it's a newer field and it's more popular degrees in psychology, like clinical psychology, or like becoming a psychiatrist, or like being a licensed professional counselor, are more popular than the LMFT. That's why you're probably like, wow, I never heard of that before. Because it's relatively new. So an LMFT can work in a hospital setting. They can work in private practice. They can work in group practices. They also work in university settings and community-based organizations, outpatient clinics. So you'll find them in some of the same fields or settings that you would find other counselors, but they're probably just less likely to be named because it's a newer degree. So I really enjoy being a licensed marriage and family therapist. I get to work with couples and families and children and individuals when I want to, because you still get the basic counseling skills, you know, and you learn how to work with anyone. But we are trained, and actually even within our degree, we have to have a certain number of relational hours to prepare us to sit for licensure. So that is a LMFT. So if you want someone, like maybe you're looking for a person who can talk to couples specifically, who has like that marriage counseling background, or has like, working with families and like multiple people in a room at once, they are a good fit, right? And then you can look at their websites to learn a little more about their specialties. So that is an LMFT, all right? So next we'll talk about an LPC or an LCPC, right? So the difference between those two is called a licensed professional counselor or a licensed clinical professional counselor. Now these two degrees, they're both getting the same general education. The only difference is if one wants to integrate private practice or work in like a group practice to do one-on-one like counseling, then they will get a licensure to become a clinically professional counselor. Right, so your licensed professional counselor, you can work in whatever setting you want, but you're probably not going to do talk therapy. You're probably not going to do one-on-one therapy until you sit for your licensure to get that clinical part added to your title. Okay. Again, general broad education on getting basic counseling skills, how to work with individuals, how to work with families. Even those who are not trained as licensed marriage and family therapists, they still have opportunities to take classes and get specialties within like couples counseling or marriage and family therapy counseling. Like whenever I'm talking to different students or trainees, I hear from different fields, I hear that they have gotten some sort of exposure at some point in their education. So you'll never not come across a counselor who's like, oh, they may not prefer to work with couples, or they may not prefer to work with families, but they're more likely to have been exposed and have gotten a class or two under their belt about that. So with a licensed professional counselor, they are generally working in different settings as well, the hospitals, the schools, community-based organizations, outpatient, right? So you'll see the LPC, but then the LCPC is probably working in a clinical setting, right, and providing that type of counseling. And also both of them can do like supervision and like research and teaching if they want. Usually people go off to get a PhD. So this is all master level. Everything I'm talking about is master level, like trained. And then if they want to go further into higher ed, they want to teach and they want to do supervision, then they will go get a PhD. So LPC, general counselor, can see and do much of anything that they want as far as counseling goes, like group settings, providing counsel and insights. But then an LCPC is that counselor that's working one-on-one with the client, integrating some sort of clinical in their practice. Okay, and that has been they sat for a licensure within that state. Okay, all right. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is an LMSW versus an LCSW. So an LMSW is someone who's a licensed master's social work. So they have sat at the master's level, they've completed all their master level requirements, and now they're working as a social worker with that credential, right? So, or at that level. So they might be working in a community setting or a school or somewhere that will give them exposure to work with more families and more children and get some more experience under their belt. They may want to pursue a LCSW, right? So they might become a licensed clinical social worker. So this is, again, someone who's focused on doing and providing that one-on-one clinical training. So that is really the big differences between a lot of our fields that are like, okay, we are LPC or we are LCSW, or LCPC and LCSW, is that they want to be clinical. They want to be in front of people one-on-one, being a counselor, right? And I have a lot of different friends who have done all of these different, who are in these different fields, have pursued these different careers, and it's been so cool just learning from their insight, the different paths that they can go upon. I have one friend who is a LCSW, and they work in a school and they provide like clinical counseling one-on-one to children. And then I have another friend who is also a LCSW but works in a community-based organization and provides counseling that way at an outpatient clinic, right? And so there, you could really choose, the direction that you want to go in, and it really depends on that individual's heart, and I really like that. That's what I love about counseling, is that it really reflects humanity, right? And the diversity of the different people that are out there. It's like, man, why don't y'all all just go get a psychology degree and call it a day, right? But we specialize in so many different things, and we have interests and passions for so many different groups of populations, and that just makes the world even cooler, because there's so many people out there that are offering these different unique services, and that means that there's going to be a lot of resources to help you. The last thing I want to go over is I want to share with you the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. So a psychologist is someone who probably has their PsyD or a PhD. So the PsyD is that they went on and got some clinical work, clinical hours in order to become a doctor of psychology. And then the PhD is that they probably did some research and training and did a dissertation around about their topic of interest to become a psychologist, a doctor of psychology as well. So, but they're a PhD. So PhD is teaching and research, whereas PsyD is a doctor of psychology with like clinical and like opportunities to train and supervise as well. Okay, so these people, they want to do a little more than just counseling. They want to teach, they want to do research, they want to provide assessments, right? And so this psychologist is able to provide an evaluation about the mental health problems that the client is presenting, and able to do assessments, which is different than a traditional talk therapist, right? So talk therapists, we're at the bottom of the food chain. I would say, like, we provide general help, and then we continue to refer up, right? So if there's a client who needs to go get an assessment, they'll be referred to a psychologist who can evaluate them and then determine, does that client need medication? Do they need any other additional resources, right? They'll figure that out. They should be partnering with the client also to get some more insight about what's a good fit for them. But then if they're referred to a psychiatrist is the one who can administer medication, and then they oversee medication management. right? And so they can do counseling, but it's really rare that they actually like sit and do counseling. They might ask a few questions in their time with you, but they're not necessarily going to be doing a full-blown like 50-minute session with you, right? They're going to be talking about how you're managing your medication and seeing if there's any other changes or shifts in that, and then how to better support you in that particular area. So that's the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. So a psychologist is not going to do medication management, but a psychiatrist would, or a medical doctor would. So if you don't have a psychiatrist, your medical doctor could prescribe medication to you and then observe your changes and talk to you about how things are going with that. So I hope that is helpful. I know there's a lot kind of thrown at you, but if you have any questions about this video, please let me know. And then if you have any additional questions that you would like for me to answer, please shoot me a DM or send me an email. You can also go to my website that's listed in my bio, and you can ask me anything you want in my contact information as well. So I'm so excited to keep sharing with you all things that I know. The next video, I'll be talking about my journey, so stay tuned to episode 3 with Q&A with Dr. Winley. Bye.